Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host. You can stop clapping now. That was nice. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. Our next guest, Ben Mendelsohn, is one of the best actors working today. You've seen him in Animal Kingdom, Rogue One, recently The Longest Hour, and now in Steven Spielberg's visionary new film, Ready Player One. It's amazing. I saw it last night. I loved it. Let's take a look at the trailer.
Come with me.
This is the Oasis. It's a place where the limits of reality are your own imagination. People come to the Oasis for all the things they can do, but they stay because of all the things they can be. I'm here talking to all of you now because our future's being threatened.
Go, go, go!
I just came here to escape, but I found something much bigger than myself. I found my friends.
What up, Z?
I found love. And now, people have lost their lives. No.
This is war. We're in control of the future.
Find him. Welcome to the rebellion, Wade. You don't tell anyone who you are. You can't use your real name. Hold on to something. This isn't just a game. I'm talking about actual life and death stuff.
What's going on?
Just practicing my Mario Kart! Come on!
Ask yourself, are you willing to fight?
Come with me.
Everybody, Ben Mendelsohn, let's hear it. Sure, thanks so much for coming back. Good to see you.
It's lovely to be here again.
I feel like this interview is probably just going to be a gush about this movie and about Steven Spielberg because, as I was telling you, I just saw it last night and it's more than impressive. It's nothing like anything else I've ever seen. It does everything that movies have been trying to do so much better than they've been doing them, and then it's also just an old school movie at times as well.
Yeah.
What was it like the first time you saw it?
Look, I was kind of just thrown back in my seat. I mean, really, it was like a stun. I was stunned. I mean, films always look different than you imagine or think they will when you're making them. But like this was like, whoa. And then we had a screening in Austin at South by Southwest, and I'm not BSing here. It was the best experience I've ever had in an audience in my life. I mean, they went off. Yeah. They went crazy. And yeah, it's a nice one to be bringing to you.
You talk about the motion capture that you do in this movie, because I'm kind of curious as to how much you had to do as an actor doing motion capture in this.
A fair bit. So basically, this film's split in two parts. You know, everyone, like, life sucks, basically, right? You know, unless you like this guy, and then it's kind of all right. But everyone else spends all their time in virtual reality, like running around this place called the Oasis, where you can do whatever you want. And for all the stuff in the Oasis, we had to do motion capture, which basically means you get into a kind of a leotard thing with a zip on it, and you put these sort of balls all over yourself, and you've got dots all over your face, which is all kind of well and good, but then you got Steven Spielberg there directing you. You know what I mean? And so it's kind of like, it's awesome. And, you know, the thing about him is he's making it up as he goes along. So you've got this enormous energy. I mean, that guy has got a genius for shots and cinema that I've never seen on display, you know, on the set at work, you know, the way you can feel it to the degree he is. So shooting the motion capture was kind of excellent. You know?
When you're shooting motion capture, I just don't know exactly how it works. Do they have to use the cameras in the motion capture the way that they expect it to sort of come out later, or is it just sort of like you can kind of do your thing and then they can rework it later digitally to kind of get the camera moving in any way that they want?
Yeah, very much. So if we were going to take this room as a stepping off point, it's a big white room. They've got cameras all up here. They've got cameras all down there. And then they've got a couple of operators, like we have cameras in this room. But, so they can capture all that stuff raw,
360.
right? Everywhere around, but then he can do whatever he wants. So he is freed from the physical constraints of any camera moves or whatever. He can do whatever he wants.
But what I also love about this film is when he's not freed from the constraints of camera moves, you can still sense a sense of love that goes into having to plan an old school shot in a movie.
Again, I don't think anyone quite has the same roots in classical Hollywood cinema and why a camera moves the way it moves. And we were talking just before then, and you were saying that, you know, none of the camera moves are without motivation. They all have there's just such a love for it. Look, he's got a fanatical sort of love of audience and an audience experience. That's a kind of a different starting point. And because he's a genius, you know, like his knowledge, it's easy to, you know, like it's easy to take him for granted because he's been around for 40 odd whatever years now. But, you know, like savor these last drops of brandy because one day the master's going to step off. And it's, you know, look, it's just awesome to be in, you know, in one of these films, and especially this one. This is...
What's it like to work with him? What's it like to get directed by Steven Spielberg as an actor? Not thinking about camera movements, but working with him as an actor.
He's a great audience. I mean, look, I carry on a lot at work, right? You know, I sing, I tell dirty jokes, I walk around, I curse a lot. I mean...
Is that how you loosen yourself up?
I don't know. It's just I started as a 14-year-old in Australia, and part of me never really changed. You know what I mean? Like set in amber there in 1984.
Arrested Development.
Oh,
right?
totally. I mean, you can't do this job without a sprinkling of Arrested Development. So I mean, and he sort of loves what people bring. You know, I sing a lot. He sings a bit. You know, he sings better than I do. And when you get something right, when you do something that he likes, it's awesome. I mean, he's like, claps his hand. Yes, that's a big movie moment. You know, there's nothing like it. But that kind of, you know, you can feel Spielberg films. You can feel the way they go. You can feel the excitement, the emotional payoffs. That's, you know, to my mind, that's the man himself. You know, that's the expression that he's able to bring through cinema. In the same way that Picasso can go like boo, 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 and you know what it is, you can feel the thing. It's the same thing with Spielberg and cinema. He's got such a connection to it, and it's so visceral, and he's able to do like that.
Now, this isn't the first villain that you've played in a movie.
No, it's not.
What do you, when you get asked to play a villain, I imagine it wouldn't matter what the villain is if it's Steven Spielberg asking you to jump in, but how do you make them different each time? Do you try, or...
Look, I think context does a lot of the work for you. I mean, really, you know, if you're paying attention to the writing of something, and that's going to do a lot of the work for you. I mean, really, as an actor, you get enormous opportunities to tonally differentiate if you're awake, you know, to do it. And so that's all. You just follow the instructions, basically. Right, and discerning the instructions is half the thing, and it's actually harder than it appears. But the main job of the actor is just interpret the writing, you know, in my opinion.
And good writing will do a lot of the work for you.
Good writing does a lot of the work for you, and then if you have...
What do you do with bad writing? Which is not this movie, but just
for
the sake of conversation.
But what do you do? You learn from hip hop. You know, you try and add something to it in terms of an attitude, in terms of a delivery style. You try and chop it up a bit. You know, give it some chopped and screwed and roar. You know, like you just mess with it. You mess with it until you got some flavour going on. In my opinion.
Are you a hip hop fan?
Oh yeah.
Are you a Chopped and Screwed fan?
Oh yeah, I love Chopped and Screwed. That first Carter album, Chopped and Screwed, that's yum, yum, yum. Yeah, I love that.
When did you start getting into hip hop?
I mean, how old are you?
I'm 34.
Yeah, around before you were born. You know, like, I mean, I'm class of 88 and all that hoo-ha, class 87. So, you know, like, yeah, when I was little, The Message came out, obviously, you know, that was the first one that really hit. Then Ice-T, The Colours, the album and the song.
Yeah, for the movie Colors,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
Dennis Hopper
Yep.
movie.
So that was a big one, and this is all down there in Australia and whatnot. But you know, it was Eric B and Rakim and Public Enemy around about that time. Run DMC, of course, those albums, the Beastie Boys albums.
I didn't know that those groups struck so much in
Oh
Australia.
yeah, very
around that
much.
time.
Yeah, very much. And no, there's huge hip hop fan base in Australia. Huge.
And do you still listen to a lot?
Oh
of
yeah,
hip-hop?
I've been listening to the Scissor album a lot. I think that's a beautiful album, and the 2 Chainz, you know, Pretty Girls Like Trap Music, which I think is one of the most delightfully named albums in a long time. Great cover art too, and some very good jams on that one. Yeah, sure.
I don't know why I find it so pleasing that you have such a knowledge of hip hop.
I'm glad.
Wonderful.
No, I'm glad you do. Yes, I do. I love it.
What was your breakthrough movie in the States? Was it Animal Kingdom?
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, without Animal Kingdom, none of the rest happens. None of it happens at all.
That's so wild because that is such a dirty character.
Sure.
Yeah, for it to catch on like that. Did you have any when you were playing that role? Did you have any expectations about it? Because
No,
it's the
I
first
thought
time Australian director, right?
Yeah, I thought more than likely the film wouldn't work, you know? Yeah, but, you know, look, I'm a pessimist at heart with all of these things. But, you know, and I take great delight in being wrong about that stuff because, you know, Davey's film smashed it.
Did you have any pessimism while on Ready Player One? You're like, I don't know, Steven, this doesn't seem like it's gonna work.
But you know, look, I have.
You have a built-in.
No, I have high standards, what I like to think of as low expectations. You don't know how things are going to work out, and that way you tend to get surprised. Yeah. And I got, you know, pretty happily surprised. I haven't watched any films that I'm in before about a year or 2 ago. And then I've seen this one a couple of times. So there's a bunch of them that I haven't even seen. But
well, what made you start watching them?
Star Wars. You know, Star Wars, really. I wasn't going to, you know, I wasn't going to miss that. They took us all up to the Skywalker Ranch and sat us down. I wasn't going to run out of the room like, yeah, I can't watch it. You know what I mean? Like, and besides, I'd done it for like a decade and a half or something like that. You know what I mean? I'm old. It's time, you know, it was just, okay, well, let's look at them again.
Right. And so you've gone back and started rewatching some of the work?
No. I haven't watched. It's not like I've gone back and poured over the catalogue and
done a marathon
done
of your
a
own
milk
movie.
bath and you know, had a cigar or something. No, I haven't done that.
And so but you're comfortable now watching your own work.
I wouldn't say comfortable, but I would say, you know, I've started doing it. You know, it's like push-ups, right? I might not be comfortable with them, but at some point you start doing them. You know.
At a
I
certain
don't know where that analogy came from. Never mind.
one of the things that I loved about the darkest hour last year, which I think I referred to as the longest hour in my prompter. Sorry, the darkest hour last year was that you weren't playing a villain, and we talked about a little bit about this before. You were playing a bit more of, I think, a kind of a nervous man, somewhat.
Well.
Compared to Churchill, a bit scared.
Well, I think. No, I think His Highness. Well, that may be how it comes. Yeah, that may be how it comes across. Certainly, I think that he was a gentle. You know, in some ways, a gentle person. I also think he was a very steadfast person. But you know, readings like that about whether someone's like this or like that are sometimes better left with you know people that are watching. Yeah, exactly, than with me. You know?
Because that'll just sort of constrict you in terms of your performance. If you
it's not about constricting me. It's not about that so much because it's already done, right? You know what I mean? Nothing we can say. I could say anything about it now. It's not going to change the performance about it. But I like an audience to have an audience thing, and I don't. You know, it's hard to commentate on them too much.
Yeah. So at this point, when you are getting sent scripts, are you kind of like no more villain scripts, or
No, absolutely not. No. Like, no, whatever. I mean, I don't look at it I don't have, the only time that this villain stuff kind of comes up is when I'm doing this. And I don't, to me, it's a
you have to
compliment. It's
categorize-
a compliment. It's like playing bass in the band. It's like, giving it at the bottom end or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like, it's pretty cool to me.
And also, there's a scene in this film that I really love, and I think you have like one line in it, and it's a memory of Halliday's, where you're sort of handing someone some coffee,
Yeah.
and you readjust your character so much to this point where he's supposed to be young. Can you talk about shooting that scene and turning your character into this moment? It's like literally a split second to define your character, who your character is for the majority of the movie.
Yeah, okay, so having just talked about how I'm not going to commentate, let me now commentate on it, because actually you're quite right. So Nolan Sorrento back in the day worked at this tech company, kind of like, I don't know, one of the big ones. You think of it out there in human land. And he was an intern, but he wants to basically suck up to the boss and kind of, like, hey, I've got these great ideas, and wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great? And he's basically just, he's ignored because he's a bit of a dick, really. And so my jumping off point for him is more that he's a guy with a bruised ego who can maneuver very well, who can talk the talk. But he's someone who I think fundamentally, will see something and just read it, get completely the wrong notion from it, Like I likened it to the guy who saw the Sex Pistols play at Manchester Free Trades Hall and thought the point of the exercise was then to go and sell T-shirts rather than make a band. Yeah.
Like, this is going to be huge. Kids are going to be wearing paper clips all the time. Or
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to go do that.
When you go into a scene like that, though, which is essentially like a split second in the movie, like I said, to define your character's backstory, do you look at it that way, or do you just try to look at it as the moment of this scene is for me to, give the coffee and feel this way and walk out of here? Try not to think of it as a big moment within the movie.
I just think of them all like propositions. You know what I mean? Like any take, any scene, they're just a proposition. You're doing a take, you might do it this way, then you might do it that way, then you might flip it up like this. I don't get too attached or too like, ooh, it's all on me now. I mean, they do kind of stitch those ideas in, like crying or some big emotional scene, and then everyone's around. It's kind of like, sometimes that can lift you up, but more often than not, that's going to squash you down. So I like to just, get out there, let's watch the waves rolling in, jump in and try and surf.
By proposition, do you mean kind of like, I'll do it this way, or I'll do it this way now?
That's all it is. It's just a different kind of, it's a vibe, You go in, you give it a go, you try it again, you give it a go, you try it again from a different angle, you give it a go. And that way, you kind of free yourself up. And it kind of lets you sort of hopefully catch the vibes a bit more. Because one thing I do think about screen acting in general is you get extra feelings when people on the screen are having a feeling. Because of the way we're wired as people, and because so much of our brain is to do with being able to pick up what's going on for other people. So it works really well in cinema. So if you as an actor feel what's going on in whatever way it is, it kind of translates.
Oh, interesting.
And that's the trick.
So
the
even
trick
if you
for me is to actually just be a human in front of all this stuff. And that's harder than you think, because there's a lot of bullshit that goes on around all this stuff that kind of makes you more kind of uptight.
It's also really hard not to communicate that emotion, with a capital A, because your initial instinct when someone tells you is your character is sad in this scene is like, okay, I got to show that I'm sad. But like you're saying is, if you just kind of feel it, the camera can register it.
Yeah, if you have it, and then, there's all sorts of other things that go on. You might have it and not want people to really know about it. You might have it, you might be fighting against it. Just like that, you might have it and want to, kind of be hostile to the feeling that's going on inside. So you can flip it all sorts of different ways. If you're interested in what makes people tick, and, you want to not suck at it, you know what I mean? And that's mainly born out of wanting to keep doing it, because once you spend some time on a set when you're a young person, you don't want to leave. It's so, it's such a great feeling. And
it's an addiction.
Well, I mean...
sorry, it's like
a habit.
Maybe not an addiction, but there is something to it that is kind of like...
It's pretty,
a rush.
It's pretty good. You don't want to stop, you know what I mean? Like, the pay's all right. You get a kind of circus family, kind of carnival feel to it. It's better. So, yeah, I mean, that was my main motivation anyway.
Yeah, you don't want to be clocking in at an.
Well, yeah, and I
day.
didn't want to. No, I wanted to be offered another job. Was mainly that's sort of what I mean. I didn't want to. I didn't want to not do it.
Let's get some questions from our audience. Who's a question? Right here.
Hi, I'm a really big fan, and
Thank you.
I know you star in a lot of different types of films. So I just want to know if you had a preference in like big blockbuster films or like small indie films.
I think. Well, I mean, what I've overwhelmingly done have been indie films. I mean, in Australia, where I've still done way more, most of my work. We don't have really, we don't really do studio films, very, very rarely. But, how many people will see this? And that's kind of awesome. And I love that. I'm not too fussed anymore about the divide between them. I think that they're all good food. If they're good food, if they're good eating, great. If they're sucky eating, but if they're good eating, I like it.
Yeah, and this one's an incredible meal.
Yeah, he knows how to cook.
Yeah. Next question, right here.
Hi, Ben. Loved you in The Darkest Hour.
Thank you.
Of all the films you've been in a lot of really popular films. What is it about this one specifically that you think resonates so well with audiences already?
Look, it's two words, and I hate to go back to it, but Steven Spielberg. And when Steven Spielberg is on song, I mean, this is like, I haven't seen him make a film like this. I haven't seen him make a film like this ever, but I haven't seen him make a film like this in a tonal sense, in a sense where you're just going, and just crushing it like this for a really, long time. I also think that the book, Ernest's book, it really hit a chord with people. I mean, it's talking a lot about society going to shit, everyone spending time in their little funky little world. It's also got a lot of really super cool, if you want to geek out, man, you can eat your Cheerio bowl full of, pop culture references. There's a plethora of pop cultural references. But, he's just so on song with this. And he's done stuff that he's never had to do. He says this himself, this is the hardest film he ever had to make. This is the film he had to dig the deepest with the technology and everything else around. We shot this a couple of years ago.
I actually didn't know that. I didn't know a couple of years ago.
Yeah. So he's been in there cooking it up, basting here and doing what he does.
Was it the type of thing where like you had to come back and shoot more as
No.
well?
Really? No. We might have had to do 2 days or 3 days or something like that. But this wasn't a big,
I don't necessarily mean reshoots to recalibrate the story or anything, but when you're working so much with the digital characters and you're sort of juxtaposing like how much you end up learning like in the process.
It was from memory. It was like nothing. It was like maybe a day or something like that. But it wasn't about the digitals. Like the digitals. Anyway, he's cooked up his masterpiece.
Yeah. Next question.
Hey.
Hello, mate.
Hi, how you doing? I was reading that you're a big fan of Robert De Niro. And
I grew up on, loving Bob.
Like myself.
Who's not?
Precisely. And I heard you kind of memorized every line from Taxi Driver, or pretty much so.
Yeah.
So the question I have, when you started, here we go. When you started with Robert De Niro and Killer Elite, what was it like working with your idol? And also, did you tell him that you memorized all those lines?
All right, so a couple of quick coddles here. I never appear in a scene or on a day that Robert De Niro is on that film. I did tell the director, look, I'll do this film, but only if you let me pretend I'm a hairdresser on the days that Bobby's on, so I can be around there. And he said, yes, absolutely. And then when it came time to, I was like, no, I don't want to. I mean, yeah, I am I'm a big fan, and in a way, I like to, I like to keep it there. You know what I mean? Like, because he's already given, you know what I mean? I don't want to go bugging him like, hey, because he's already given me everything that he possibly could in that way. Because I've sat there watching him, and yeah, we used to do that a lot. I've seen that film like 60 odd times or something. Too much, from 15 to 20, whatever, a lot.
Do you have the thing with Taxi Driver that I have, which is that Taxi Driver is actually a lot of times a very funny movie?
Oh, yeah, no, there's definitely funny bits. There's also bad bits. Once you get to that point and you go, oh, that scene is so dumb, you know, like, oh, yeah, like, you know, like a rabbit hip hop. You know, like that one. Like, well, for instance, when they're coming out of the theatre, I'm sorry, there is no man in the history of the world that is that dumb that he doesn't know he's taken a woman to a porn.
That's a scene that I find very funny.
Yeah, I know, and it is.
Women,
you know, please, Betsy, I know more films. I know more films. Yeah, I mean, but it's just such a masterpiece. I mean, it's such. I mean, look for like kind of everyone involved in that. Like, I mean, he is just mesmerising. He is mesmerising. Harvey Keitel is beautiful. Sybil Shepherd is beautiful. How many scenes is Marty in the film?
He's in that one scene where he's in the
what
back
other
seat of the
scenes
car.
he in?
Oh, he's the voice on the. Isn't he a voice?
He's sitting there. He's sitting with an inside-out Columbia T-shirt when Betsy comes out of the Palatine office. He's sitting there like a happy geek, watching her walk past.
Right.
Yeah, sorry. You've got me started. I'm going down the.
And then he's got the scene in the back of the cab, which was supposed
course.
to be another actor, I believe, and they couldn't be there that day, and Scorsese just did it.
Oh right, I'm not
Yeah.
not sure about that. But in any case, yes, I fell deeply down the Taxi Driver hole.
But what I love about De Niro in that film and in other Scorsese films as well, King of Comedy, obviously, because it is the King of Comedy, is that he, even in this most serious roles, never forgets like an underlying humor about his characters.
Yes.
You know, Jimmy in Goodfellas is like pretty funny at times.
Yeah.
Raging Bull, his moments where he's completely insane are like kind of hilarious. And with Taxi Driver, his awkwardness and how he interacts with people, he doesn't forget that this guy is weird and kind of entertaining.
I think, I think too that when something's got a lot of richness to it, it can have dual readings going on at the same time. Yeah.
Like I think of your character in Animal Kingdom as well, which is like deplorable and awful at times, but also you do play him with a fair amount of. There are times where he's pretty funny. Yeah,
and I think that's something that Australian audiences get a lot more. I mean, there's
not because he's telling a joke or anything.
No. It's a certain thing about placement of certain things and you know, sometimes having a phase like where there's a space where there can be two different readings of stuff going on, that I think can make things, you know, work on that level as well. But, you know, that's a pretty, I think that's a pretty sophisticated reading of that stuff, you know?
Oh, thanks.
I mean that. I don't think a lot of people pick up on that. Yeah. You know?
I've said to people that Taxi Driver can be pretty funny sometimes, and really nasty look.
And it absolutely can. I mean, you've got the scenes in there with, you know, Alfred Boyle, with the...
Albert Brooks?
Thank you, Albert Brooks. I keep getting him and Peter Boyle mixed up. I mean, they're funny scenes, you know, and, you know, I don't know much about, but, you know, like all the scenes outside with Peter Boyle, they're funny scenes. And inside with Doughboy, you know, selling Errol Flynn's bathtub. I mean, it's ridiculous. That's right. You know, I had a horse once in Coney Island, but she got hit by a car, and what are you going to do? I mean, like this, it's throughout it, yes.
Yeah. One more question.
Hi. I remember seeing you for the first time in a film in The Dark Knight Rises and thinking, I was like, I don't know who this guy is, but I really like him. And then I saw you in this film, Starred Up.
Oh, yeah,
and I thought to myself, I was like, I want this guy in every movie ever. So it's really cool to get to ask you a question. And I was wondering, when you're getting, you know, offers to do certain films, at what point in reading the script or in talking with the director do you decide, I'm going to do this movie?
Usually pretty quickly. Like, I mean, you usually kind of know pretty quickly. Like, sometimes it's easier to know no. That you can become aware of, you know, often within the first 5 pages of reading something. But if you know yes, I mean, sometimes you know really quickly, you know, like, I mean, I'd have done almost anything to just, you know, be around Steven Spielberg, do a Spielberg film. So sometimes it's a no-brainer, but...
What about something like Startup?
Well, I was just about to go there. See, Startup was a kind of a roll of the dice thing because it was going to, you know, England, in this case it was actually Northern Ireland, but it was going over to England and doing an English character. Now, in America, you kind of used to having us, you know, foreign types drop in and sort of drop into an Australian, American accent or whatever. However, for us as Australians, that stuff becomes a huge deal. You get into union stuff and this stuff and the other stuff. And so it's pretty much the same for the English. So I was like, I don't know, you know. And also I didn't know whether I could do it or not. I didn't know whether I could pull it off. But I think there's a good rule of thumb in the arts, performing arts, and probably more in life too, which is if you think you might be able to do it, you should probably go for it. So it was a roll of the dice. And again, I didn't expect the film to turn out or this or that, the other. I didn't think it was going to. And then, you know, crack, home run.
Is that one that you've seen?
No. But you know which ones work.
Yeah.
You know, you know which ones work because of the way they affect people.
Can you tell sometimes when you're on a set of a movie like that it's working?
Nope.
Really?
Nope.
Even when you're doing scenes with
Nope.
Jack O'Connell, right?
Nope.
No.
No. Because, and it's the same thing that I come back to with the proposition thing, right? I would have done that a bunch of different ways at the time. It was a prison. It was the middle of winter. It was Belfast. It was miserable. You know, you get out there and you go la 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 la. And you know, making a film is not about having a good time. You know what I mean? It's not about having a good time. It's got nothing to do with having a good time. So it felt like crap. But you know, it's people love that film. People love that film. And I'm very proud of it.
I recommend going back and checking it out, sir. It's a pretty great movie.
When I grow up, you know, when I reach mature age, I'll do it.
Mr. Mendelsohn, Ready Player One next week, Friday, March 29th, right?
Yep.
It's phenomenal. It's
Yep.
an incredible experience. I hope it breaks every box office record. It's extremely well deserved, not just because it's a big popcorn film, because it's a fucking very well made big popcorn
Yeah, it
film.
really is. Thank you.
Ben Mendelsohn, everybody. Let's
Thank
hear
you,
it.
guys. Thank you very much.